This is one of the most stable founding documents on Earth. In almost 80 years, Japan has never changed a single word of it. Not one. Most democracies amend, revise, argue over their constitutions. Japan's has remained untouched. It was written by foreigners in about a week, in a language most of the country couldn't read. Let's go off script. After the surrender, MacArthur gives the Japanese government a job: rewrite the old imperial constitution, make it democratic, make it modern. The Japanese commission goes to work. Months pass. They produce a draft. It changes very little. The emperor remains sovereign. The old system survives in a newer vocabulary. Douglas MacArthur reads it. He rejects it. Then he does something occupiers are usually careful not to do. He orders his own staff to write one instead. A small group inside GHQ, most of them not constitutional scholars, some of them military officers locked in a room in Tokyo, drafting the founding law of a country that was not theirs. They finish in about 9 days. A nation's highest law written by foreigners in a foreign language. The section guaranteeing equal rights for Japanese women was written by a 22-year-old, Beate Sirota Gordon. She was not a lawyer. She had grown up in Tokyo. As a child, she had seen what women could not do, could not inherit, could not become. Now she had a typewriter and a deadline, so she put the rights in. Here is the part most people skip. Why 9 days? Japan wasn't only occupied by the United States. On paper, it was occupied by all the allies. 11 countries, including the Soviet Union, Australia, Britain, and China. And they had a body meant to oversee the occupation together. It was called the Far Eastern Commission. It was scheduled to hold its first real session in Washington in late February 1946. General Douglas MacArthur knew what that meant. The moment that commission sat down, Japan's future stopped being his decision alone. The Soviets wanted a harder peace. Australia had spent years fighting the Japanese army island by island, and its government wanted the monarchy gone entirely, not reformed, gone. China wanted accountability that went far beyond a written preamble. If General MacArthur waited for 11 governments to agree on a constitution, he might get nothing usable. Or worse, a document written by committee fought over for a year, arriving too late to matter in a Japan that might destabilize in the meantime. So, he didn't wait. He had his own staff draft the whole thing before the Far Eastern Commission ever convened. Present the Japanese government with the finished text. Get it moving through Japanese politics fast enough that by the time the other allies had an opinion, there would already be a draft on the table. A Japanese draft, debated in a Japanese parliament. Not a proposal to negotiate, a fact to react to. It worked. By the time Washington's commission was fully organized, Tokyo was already debating a text in Japanese, moving toward a vote. The other allies could still object, but they no longer controlled the first draft. 9 days wasn't just speed for its own sake. It was Douglas MacArthur closing a door before 11 countries could get a hand on it. The world remembers one clause from the Constitution. Article 9. Japan renounces war forever. No army, no navy, no air force. The defeated empire writes its own disarmament into law. It became the famous part, the pacifist clause, the line everyone remembers. But it was not the clause that mattered most to General MacArthur. His biggest problem was the emperor. And this was not a quiet disagreement. Inside the Allied camp, The question of what to do with Hirohito was one of the most contested issues of the entire occupation. In Germany, the leadership of the regime was standing trial and some were being executed. Australia's government formally pushed for Hirohito to face the same reckoning. The Soviet Union backed a hard line. Even inside Washington, there were officials who believed that leaving the wartime emperor on his throne made a mockery of everything the war had been fought over. General MacArthur disagreed, and he disagreed for a cold, practical reason, not a sentimental one. His intelligence people told him that removing Hirohito could ignite exactly the kind of resistance the occupation was built to avoid: an emperor turned martyr, a country that saw itself as occupied by force rather than reformed by consent. Keeping him on the throne, MacArthur argued, was the fastest way to keep Japan governable. He won that argument, but winning it meant the Constitution had to do something almost contradictory: keep the man and dismantle the idea that had made him dangerous. Article 1 did that. The emperor on the throne, but sovereignty no longer came from him. It came from the people. The living God became the symbol of the state. The man stayed. The meaning of the throne changed. Article 9 disarmed Japan. Article 1 disarmed everyone who wanted the emperor hanged. Women gained the right to vote and used it within months. 39 women entered the parliament less than a year after the surrender. Written by occupiers, passed under occupation. Most of these reforms arrived before Japan had the chance to shape them itself. Imagine opening your morning newspaper in Tokyo in March 1946. The document that would define your country's future had not been drafted in the Imperial Diet. It had been written inside the headquarters of the occupying army. The newspapers didn't hide it. Some editorials welcomed the draft. Japan had just lost a catastrophic war. To many, a clean constitutional break with the past felt necessary. Others saw something more uncomfortable. Could a constitution imposed by foreign soldiers ever become legitimate? The debate was not only about democracy, it was about ownership. Conservative politicians challenged article after article, especially anything touching the emperor. Lawyers questioned whether a constitution born under military occupation could truly express the will of the Japanese people. And yet, no serious political alternative ever emerged, because every alternative brought Japan back toward the very system that had just collapsed. The draft entered the Diet. It was debated, amended, translated, argued over line by line in Japanese. When the final version emerged, it no longer looked like an American military order. It looked like a Japanese constitution, and that distinction mattered. When the constitution was promulgated in November 1946, it wasn't announced by General Douglas MacArthur. It was proclaimed by Emperor Hirohito himself, the same emperor whose powers the document had just dismantled. The most foreign document in modern Japanese history entered Japanese history through the most Japanese voice imaginable. The Constitution took effect in 1947. It survived the Reconstruction. It survived the Cold War, Japanese economic miracle, its financial collapse. Every government that followed, every few decades, the same debate returns. Should Japan rewrite Article 9? Should it become a normal military power? Should the Constitution finally become fully Japanese? The debate changes, the document doesn't. That may be the greatest irony of the entire occupation. The Constitution that many Japanese first viewed as an American document, became the one document successive Japanese governments have found almost impossible to change. Written by foreigners in 9 days, in a language most of the country could not read. Yet, after nearly 80 years, it has outlived the occupation that created it. It outlived Douglas MacArthur. It even outlived the Cold War. The occupation that wrote this constitution officially ended in 1952. Its military presence did not. That's where our story goes next. This was History of Script. You know where to find me.